"You are dead to us," my sister screamed, her face twisted in a sneer that ruined her perfect makeup. My parents did not gasp. They did not tell her to calm down. They just nodded in agreement, looking at me like I was a stain on their pristine rug. I did not scream back. I did not cry. I just packed my bags and walked out into the cold night. But this morning, I woke up to 97 missed calls from the exact same people who threw me away. Now they are begging for my help. But they do not know I am not the helpless blue-collar worker they think I am. And what happened next is a lesson they will never forget. The air inside Callahan's warehouse always smelled like a comforting mix of fresh sawdust, heavy motor oil, and old coffee. I opened my eyes slowly, feeling the familiar stiffness in my neck from sleeping on the worn-out leather sofa in the corner of his break room. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed a low, steady hum. For a moment, I just stared at the cracked ceiling, letting the reality of last night wash over me. I was 28 years old, a commercial plumbing and HVAC contractor, and I had just been excommunicated from my own family. You know what the worst part of being rejected by your family is? It is not the yelling. It is the silence that follows. The kind of silence that settles deep into your bones when you realize the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally actually despise you. When Sloan delivered her verdict, there was no hesitation from my father, Harrison. There was no motherly defense from Corinne. Just a cold, calculated agreement that my presence was no longer required or desired in their beautiful, heavily mortgaged suburban home. I had walked out of that house with nothing but a duffel bag and the clothes on my back, leaving behind a lifetime of being the invisible scapegoat. I reached into the pocket of my grease-stained jacket and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up, glaring in the dim warehouse light. 97 missed calls. My thumb hovered over the screen, scrolling through the endless stream of notifications. Missed call from Sloan. Missed call from Mom. Missed call from Dad. Texts pouring in like a broken dam. It was funny in a sick, twisted way. Less than 12 hours ago, I was toxic. I was a burden. I was dead to them. Now, suddenly, I was the most popular person in their universe. The heavy metal door of the break room pushed open with a loud creak. Callahan walked in. He was a mountain of a man, 45 years old, with a thick beard and hands that looked like they could crush bricks. He owned this industrial supply warehouse and had been more of a father to me in the last 5 years than Harrison had been in my entire life. He did not ask what I was doing sleeping on his couch. He did not pry into the red rims of my eyes. He just walked over to the coffee pot, poured a steaming cup of pitch-black coffee into a chipped ceramic mug, and set it on the small table next to me. "The bay doors are open," Callahan said, his voice a low gravelly rumble. "And you know the code to the front gate. You can stay here as long as you need, Delaney." "Thanks, Cal," I muttered, my voice hoarse from a night of restless tossing and turning. He gave a sharp nod and walked out, leaving me to the buzzing fluorescent lights and the glowing screen of my phone. I took a sip of the bitter coffee, letting the heat burn away the lingering fog in my brain. I looked down at my phone again. The notifications were frantic. Desperate. They were not just calling to apologize. You do not leave 97 missed calls because you feel bad about hurting someone's feelings. You leave 97 missed calls when your own world is burning down and you need a firefighter. I opened the text thread from my mother. "Delaney, please pick up. It is an emergency. Sloan is in trouble." I scoffed out loud, the sound echoing in the empty room. Sloan was always in trouble. She was a luxury event planner who spent money like she printed it in her basement. Her entire life was built on a foundation of maxed-out credit cards and unpaid invoices. I swiped away the message and looked at the next one from my father. "Stop being petty and answer your phone. We need you down here right now." Petty. Even when they were begging, they could not help but throw an insult my way. I took another sip of coffee, feeling a strange sense of calm settling over me. For the first time in my life, I was not scrambling to fix their problems. I was not shrinking myself to fit into their tiny, judgmental boxes. Just as I was about to put the phone down, it buzzed in my hand. A new text message. Number 98. It was from Harrison again. "Delaney, get home right now. The police are here for your sister." My breath hitched for a fraction of a second. The police. That was new. Sloane was a liar and a manipulator, but she had never crossed the line into actual criminal territory, at least not that I knew of. I stared at the message, watching the little typing bubbles appear and disappear as my father frantically drafted his next demand. A small, dark part of me wanted to reply, to ask what happened. But I knew better. If I engaged, I would be pulled right back into their web. I needed to understand the board before I made my move. I needed to let them sweat. Because whatever storm was hitting Sloane right now, she had brewed it herself. I set the phone face down on the table, picked up my boots, and started tying the laces. How far was I willing to let them fall before I stepped in? I walked out of the break room and out onto the loading dock. The early morning air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of exhaust from the nearby highway. I leaned against the rusted metal railing, watching the sun slowly rise over the industrial park. Why did I not just run back? Why did I not answer the phone and rush to their rescue like a good little daughter? Because last night was not an isolated incident. It was just the final brick in a massive wall of rejection they had been building since I was a child. If you walked through the museum of my life, you would find countless artifacts of their contempt. Exhibit A, my trade school graduation. While my friends had their families cheering for them in the stands, holding up embarrassing signs and taking a million photos, my section of the bleachers was empty. I walked across the stage in my graduation gown, knowing I had my heavy-duty work coveralls on underneath because I had a plumbing shift right after the ceremony. I scanned the crowd, hoping to see my mother's forced smile or my father's stiff posture. Nothing. Later that night, when I got home smelling like copper pipes and sweat, I found out why they never showed up. Sloane had a last-minute fitting for a dress she was wearing to a local lifestyle magazine launch party. My mother, Corinne, simply told me, "You understand, Delaney. Sloane has to network. Your little certificate ceremony is not going to make or break your career in the sewers." Exhibit B, my first truck. I had saved up for 3 years, taking on every grueling, dirty job no one else wanted, just to buy a used, heavy-duty Ford F-250. It was not pretty. It had a few dents and the paint was chipping on the tailgate, but it ran like a beast and it was mine. I paid in cash. I was so proud that I drove it straight to my parents' house, wanting to show them that my hard work was paying off. Harrison took one look at it from the porch, his face scrunching up in disgust. "You cannot park that monstrosity in our driveway, Delaney. It looks like the truck of a homeless person. The neighbors will think we are hiring day laborers. Park it 2 blocks down the street." I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, holding back tears of humiliation as I backed out of my own driveway. Exhibit C, Thanksgiving dinner, just 2 years ago. I had landed a huge commercial contract and wanted to celebrate silently. I went to a specialty wine shop and bought a bottle of wine that cost nearly $300. I brought it to dinner, setting it proudly on the kitchen counter. When it was time to eat, Sloane walked out of the kitchen holding the bottle. She had carefully peeled off the back sticker and presented it to the family, loudly proclaiming that one of her high-end clients had gifted it to her as a token of appreciation for her flawless event planning. I saw my mother look at the bottle, then look at me. She knew. She had seen me bring it in. But when I opened my mouth to correct Sloane, Harrison shot me a glaring look across the table. "Do not make a scene, Delaney," he whispered harshly. "You work in the gutters. Drink the beer in the fridge and let your sister have her moment." Those were just the highlights. The daily grind of being Delaney meant listening to their constant disappointed sighs, watching them hide my profession from their country club friends, and enduring Sloane's relentless mockery about my calloused hands and lack of a wealthy husband. They worshipped the illusion of success, and Sloane was their glowing, fake masterpiece. My phone buzzed again, snapping me out of the past. It was not a text this time. It was a voicemail notification. The number belonged to Aunt Marjorie. Aunt Marjorie was the family's designated flying monkey. She was the one who spread the gossip, the one who enforced the family rules, and the one who always made sure I knew my place. I debated deleting it, but curiosity got the better of me. I hit play and held the speaker to my ear. Her shrill, nasal voice pierced through the morning quiet. "Delaney, I cannot believe how ungrateful you are being. Your mother is having a nervous breakdown in the living room, and your father is dealing with the police, and you are just hiding like a coward. After everything they have done to put a roof over your head, you abandon them when your sister needs you the most? You are a selfish brat. Do you have any idea what is at stake here? Sloan could lose the contract with billionaire Vaughn because of your petty little tantrum. If you do not get your blue-collar trash self down here right now and fix this, you will never be allowed back in this family." I lowered the phone, letting the message end. Billionaire Vaughn. The name echoed in my head. Arthur Vaughn was a real estate tycoon. He was developing a massive chain of luxury resorts on the coast. I knew who he was because my company, though hidden behind a corporate LLC name they knew nothing about, had just placed a bid to handle the commercial plumbing and HVAC for his entire northern sector. Why would the police being at the house jeopardize Sloan's contract with Vaughn? Aunt Marjorie always talked too much, and this time, she had slipped up and handed me a massive puzzle piece. I leaned my head back against the cold brick wall of the warehouse. Sloan was trying to land Vaughn as a client. She needed everything to look perfect. But the police were there. That meant the facade was cracking. My mind started working, the gears grinding together. I needed to know exactly what kind of mess my perfect sister had stepped into. To understand the magnitude of Sloan's impending downfall, you have to understand the ridiculous illusion she had built her entire life around. Sloan was 31 years old and lived her life like she was starring in a reality television show that nobody was actually filming. She called herself a luxury event planner, which essentially meant she rented expensive floral arrangements and screamed at catering staff for a living. She wore designer clothes, drove a leased luxury SUV that she could barely afford the insurance on, and carried herself with the kind of unearned arrogance that made you want to pull your hair out. But it was all a house of cards. I knew it. She knew I knew it. And that was why she hated me. Just a month ago, we were forced to have lunch together for our mother's birthday. We were sitting at an upscale bistro downtown. The waitress, a young college student who looked exhausted, accidentally spilled a single drop of condensation from a water glass onto Sloan's quilted handbag. It was a Chanel bag. Or, at least, it was supposed to be. I knew for a fact it was a high-tier fake she had bought from a shady website because I had seen the shipping label in the trash. But Sloan reacted like the waitress had poured acid on a newborn baby. She stood up, slamming her hands on the table, and loudly berated the girl, calling her incompetent, clumsy, and demanding she be fired immediately. The waitress was in tears, apologizing profusely. I ended up leaving a $100 tip on the table and walking out before the appetizers even arrived, ignoring my mother's protests. Sloan was a monster to anyone she deemed beneath her, and she deemed almost everyone beneath her. Including me. Especially me. She loved to preach about class and hustle, but the reality was pathetic. Last year, I caught her sneaking into the kitchen late at night to steal my mother's credit card out of her purse. Why? Because her phone service had been suspended for non-payment. The great luxury planner could not even afford a $100 phone bill without leeching off our parents. But Harrison and Corinne turned a blind eye to it all. They wanted the aesthetic of a successful daughter so badly that they willingly financed the delusion. I walked back into the warehouse break room, pulled out my heavy-duty laptop from my duffel bag, and booted it up. I might wear dirty coveralls, but my business was a well-oiled machine, and I had access to premium corporate background check software that I used to vet large commercial clients. If Sloan was dealing with the police and it involved Arthur Vaughn, it had to be financial. I opened the software, typed in Sloan's full legal name, and hit enter. The loading wheel spun for a few seconds before the screen populated with data. I leaned closer to the screen, my eyes scanning the lines of text. My jaw slowly dropped. Sloan was not just broke. She was drowning in an ocean of radioactive debt. There were 14 different credit cards maxed out to the limit. There were 3 separate accounts and collections. But that was not the worst part. There was a massive red flag flashing on the screen. A high-interest, short-term loan from a predatory lending company for $84,000, and it was marked as severely delinquent. They were preparing to file a lawsuit for fraud. This was not a case of identity theft. Hackers did not steal her information. She had not been victimized. She had spent money she did not have to fund a lifestyle that did not exist, and now the bill had come due. The police were not there to help her. They were there because she was likely facing criminal charges for writing bad checks or committing wire fraud to keep her sinking ship afloat. I sat back in the creaky leather chair, staring at the glowing screen. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a pipe wrench. The woman who called me blue-collar trash, the woman who said I was a disgrace to the family name, was a textbook fraudster. And my parents, the people who banished me into the night, were currently sitting in their living room, watching their golden child get exposed. If you were me, discovering your sister is a con artist trying to shift the blame onto others, what would you do? Leave a comment, because what I do next is much darker. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see the ending. I closed the laptop with a satisfying snap. I knew exactly what had triggered this meltdown. It all traced back to last night. The family meeting. The catalyst that blew this whole fake family dynamic wide open. I closed my eyes and let the memory of Sunday night play in my head, raw and unfiltered. It was 7 in the evening. Sunday. The kind of evening where the dread of the upcoming work week usually settles in, but the air in my parents' living room was thick with a different kind of tension. I had been summoned by a rare group text from Harrison that simply read, "Family meeting in the living room. Now. Do not be late." I had walked in wearing my work jeans and a faded gray t-shirt. Sloane was already perched on the expensive velvet sofa, wearing a silk lounge set, her legs crossed tightly. She was chewing her manicured thumbnail, a nervous habit she only displayed when she was cornered. Mom was pacing behind the sofa, wringing her hands, while Dad stood by the fireplace, trying to project an aura of absolute authority. "Take a seat, Delaney," Dad ordered, pointing to the armchair across from Sloane. I sat down, keeping my posture relaxed, refusing to show the anxiety bubbling in my stomach. "What is going on?" I asked, looking between the three of them. Sloane took a deep breath and put on her best fake sincere voice. The tone she usually reserved for apologizing to rich clients. "Delaney, I am on the verge of the biggest deal of my career. Arthur Vaughn, the billionaire developer, is looking for an exclusive event planner for his new coastal resort launch. If I land this, I am set for life. The commission alone is astronomical." "Okay," I said slowly. And she continued, her voice tightening slightly, "I need to throw a preliminary showcase event to prove I can handle his aesthetic. I need to rent the grand atrium downtown, hire the best caterers, bring in imported floral arrangements. It has to be flawless." "Sounds expensive," I deadpanned. "It is," Dad cut in, his voice gruff. "It requires a short-term capital investment. $150,000. I raised an eyebrow. "That is a lot of money to spend on a job you do not even have yet. So, why am I here?" Sloane uncrossed her legs and leaned forward, her eyes wide, trying to look vulnerable. "My credit is a little tied up right now with other vendor deposits. The bank will approve a business loan for the showcase, but I need a cosigner. Someone with a clean credit history and a stable income to guarantee the short-term note." The room went completely silent. I looked at Sloane. Then I looked at Corinne. Then at Harrison. They were all staring at me with a sickening mixture of expectation and entitlement. They wanted me to put my name, my credit, and my hard-earned business stability on the line for a $150,000 loan so Sloane could throw a fake party for a billionaire. "No," I said flatly. Sloane blinked, as if I had just spoken to her in a foreign language. "What do you mean no?" "I mean no. I am not co-signing a loan for you, Sloane. I am not risking my financial future so you can play pretend with rich people." Sloane's face turned a dangerous shade of red. The fake vulnerability vanished instantly, replaced by sheer venom. "Play pretend? I am building an empire. You unclog toilets for a living. You should be honored I am even asking you to be part of something this prestigious. I build commercial infrastructure, I corrected her, keeping my voice dangerously calm. And I do not print money to fund your fake life. If your business is so successful, the bank would not need my signature. Delaney, that is enough. Harrison barked, slamming his hand on the mantel. Your sister is trying to elevate this family. You have always been jealous of her success. For once in your life, stop being so selfish and do something for someone other than yourself. Selfish. I let out a dry, bitter laugh. You want me to take on a 6-figure debt for her, and I am the selfish one? Corinne stepped forward, tears pooling in her eyes. Please, Delaney. If she does not get this money, everything she has worked for will collapse. We are family. Family helps family. Family? I stood up, the anger finally breaking through my calm facade. Where was my family when I was working 80-hour weeks to build my business? Where was my family when I graduated? Where was my family when I had to park my truck down the street because I embarrassed you? Sloane jumped up from the sofa, her hands balled into fists. The mask was completely off. She looked feral. You know what your problem is, Delaney? You are a miserable, dirty little peasant who wants to drag everyone else down into the mud with you. You are nothing. You will always be nothing. She took a step closer, pointing a manicured finger right in my face. And then, she said the words that would change everything. You are a disgusting piece of trash. You are dead to us. No one wants you here. No one wants you here. The echo of her screaming faded into the heavy silence of the living room. I looked at Corinne. She looked away, staring at the floor. I looked at Harrison. He met my gaze, his jaw set, and gave a firm, deliberate nod. Your sister is right, my father said, his voice cold as ice. Your attitude is toxic. You bring nothing but negativity into this house. Pack your things and get out. We are done with you. I did not argue. I did not cry. I did not beg for them to love me. I simply turned around, walked upstairs, packed my duffel bag, and walked out the front door. And now, 12 hours later, sitting in Callahan's warehouse, looking at the truth of Sloane's massive fraud on my screen, I realized something beautiful. They did not just kick me out. They kicked out their only lifeline. Monday morning hit the city with a gray, overcast sky, reflecting the cold, calculating mood settling in my chest. I did not text them back. I did not answer the calls. I stood up from the computer, stripped off my casual clothes, and put on my heavy-duty work coveralls. They were stained with oil, dirt, and honest labor. I laced up my steel-toed boots, feeling the familiar, grounding weight of them. If they wanted to treat me like a blue-collar peasant, I was going to show up to the war wearing my uniform. I walked out of the break room and found Callahan near the loading dock, reviewing a stack of shipping manifests. He glanced up, taking in my expression. You look like you are about to demolish a building, kid, he noted, his tone mild but observant. Something like that, I replied, grabbing a hard hat and tossing it into the passenger seat of my F-250. Hey, Cal, remember 3 years ago when I asked you to recommend a sharp real estate attorney? Callahan leaned against a pallet of copper pipes and crossed his arms. Yeah, Miller. Bulldog of a lawyer. Why? You buying another commercial lot? No, I said, a slow, tight smile forming on my lips. I am preparing to evict some squatters. Callahan raised an eyebrow, a silent question in his eyes, but true to form, he did not press for details. Give them hell, Delaney. I climbed into my truck, the diesel engine roaring to life with a satisfying rumble. I pulled out of the industrial park and drove toward downtown. I was not going to the police station. I was not going to my parents' house. I was going to my lawyer's office. Here is the plot twist my family did not know, the secret I had buried so deep because I knew they would never handle the truth. 3 years ago, Harrison's consulting business went under. He was drowning in debt and facing imminent foreclosure on that beautiful, pristine suburban house they loved so much. Corinne was a mess and Sloane, naturally, offered zero financial help. I was the one who stepped in. But I knew Harrison's pride. If I handed him money directly, he would either reject it out of spite or take it and resent me forever. So I hired Miller. Through my LLC, Horizon Plumbing and HVAC Solutions, I bought the mortgage from the bank quietly. We structured it so Harrison believed a state-funded housing relief program had purchased the debt and allowed him to stay on a heavily subsidized rent-to-own lease. The reality? I was their landlord. The LLC that they thought was just a messy pipe-fitting side gig owned the roof over their heads. I paid the property taxes. I held the deed. I parked outside Miller's sleek downtown office, ignoring the stares of the men in expensive suits as I walked through the glass doors in my dirty coveralls. Miller was waiting for me in his office, looking sharp in a navy suit. "Delaney," he greeted, shaking my hand firmly. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "More contract disputes with suppliers." "I need you to draft a document," I said, taking a seat in the plush leather chair opposite his desk. "A 30-day notice of eviction. Standard terms for violation of lease agreement and failure to maintain property standards." Miller pulled out a legal pad, his pen poised. "All right. Who is the tenant?" "Harrison and Corinne Vance," I stated evenly. Miller stopped writing. He looked up, his brow furrowed. He knew exactly who they were. He had orchestrated the stealth buyout 3 years ago. "Your parents." "Delaney, are you sure about this?" "Once I serve this, there is no going back. It is public record. It is a declaration of war." "They declared war last night," I replied, my voice devoid of any hesitation. "They told me I was dead to them. They kicked me out. So, I am returning the favor. Draft the notice, Miller. Have it ready for my signature by noon." "Understood," Miller said, his professional demeanor snapping back into place. "Anything else?" "Yes. Prepare the LLC's financial disclosure documents. I want full proof of my net worth, my liquid assets, and my ownership of Horizon Solutions printed out and bound in a nice, neat folder." Miller's eyes gleamed with professional intrigue. "Going for the jugular, I see." "No," I corrected him. "I am just showing them the board they have been playing on this whole time." I walked out of Miller's office feeling a surge of adrenaline. The power dynamic had shifted so violently it made my head spin. For 28 years, I had let them make me feel small. I had let them dictate my worth. But silence is a funny thing. When you stay quiet, people assume you are weak. They do not realize you are just observing, collecting data, building your fortress while they play with paper castles. I got back into my truck and my phone started ringing through the Bluetooth speakers. It was Corinne again. I let it ring, watching the number flash on the dashboard screen. Then came a text. "Delaney, please." The police left, but the bank called. "They are freezing everything. Sloan is hysterical. You have to come to the central bank branch right now. It is about the trust account." I stared at the dashboard. The trust account. When we were teenagers, our grandparents had set up a joint trust account for Sloan and me, meant for emergencies or college. It had required both our signatures to access. I had forgotten about it years ago, assuming it had been drained by bank fees or inflation. Why would the bank freeze everything over a dormant account? Unless it was not dormant. Unless someone had tried to use it. I put the truck in drive and merged onto the highway, heading straight for the central bank. The pieces were finally falling into place, and the picture they formed was uglier than I could have ever imagined. The drive to the central bank branch felt excruciatingly slow, despite the massive engine of my truck. My phone was practically vibrating off the center console. The messages were shifting in tone, moving from desperate pleading to aggressive manipulation. "Mom, Delaney, how can you do this to your own sister? She is crying her eyes out. Please, put aside your petty jealousy. Blood is thicker than water. Dad, I expect you at the bank in 10 minutes. Stop this childish, silent treatment. You are making things worse for everyone. If you do not show up, you are no daughter of mine." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. No daughter of mine. He had already established that last night when he nodded in agreement as Sloan told me to die. They were panicking. Good. Let them panic. I pulled my dusty F-250 into the pristine, manicured parking lot of the central bank's main branch. It stood out like a sore thumb among the sleek Mercedes and BMWs. I killed the engine, took a deep breath, and stepped out. I did not bother wiping the grease off my cheek or tucking in my shirt. I wanted them to see me exactly as I was. As I walked through the heavy glass double doors, the sterile, overly air-conditioned air of the bank hit me. The lobby was quiet, filled with the hushed murmurs of tellers and wealthy clients. I bypassed the main line and walked straight toward the VIP management offices in the back. A sharp-looking woman in her late 40s, wearing a tailored gray pantsuit, stepped out of an office holding a thick file. Her name tag read Kensington, branch manager. She had a reputation for being an absolute shark, a woman who strictly adhered to banking regulations and despised frivolous clients. I had dealt with her a few times when setting up the commercial accounts for Horizon LLC. She respected me because I did not waste her time and my checks always cleared. She saw me approaching, her sharp eyes scanning my coveralls before meeting my gaze. "Ms. Delaney, I did not expect to see you here today, especially not in the retail lobby." "It has been a weird morning, Kensington," I said, offering a tight smile. "I believe my family is waiting for me in one of your conference rooms." Kensington's expression shifted from professional courtesy to thinly veiled disdain. Yes, the Vance family. They are currently occupying conference room B, drinking our sparkling water and demanding to speak to the regional director." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "May I speak with you privately for a moment before you go in there?" "Of course." She gestured for me to follow her into her private office and closed the door firmly behind us. The sound of the lobby vanished. Kensington walked behind her heavy mahogany desk and sighed, looking at the file in her hands. "I am going to speak plainly, Delaney, because I respect your business acumen and, frankly, I despise what your sister is trying to pull," Kensington said, her tone icy. "Tell me everything," I replied, crossing my arms. "Your sister, Sloane, came in early this morning in a panic. She attempted to leverage a joint trust account to secure a line of credit to stave off a collection agency." Kensington opened the file and pushed a piece of paper across the desk. She presented this document to authorize the withdrawal of $50,000. "It requires 2 signatures. Hers and yours." I looked down at the paper. It was a standard authorization form. At the bottom, next to Sloane's loopy, dramatic signature, was my name. Delaney Vance. Written in neat, practiced cursive. A cold fury washed over me. "I did not sign this." "I know," Kensington said flatly. "Our fraud department flagged it immediately. The signature does not match any of your commercial documents on file. Furthermore, we ran a standard background check due to the size of the requested line of credit. Your sister is not the victim of a cyber attack or a hacker, as she is currently screaming in my conference room. She is drowning in debt. I finished for her." "I know. I ran her through my corporate screening software an hour ago." Kensington nodded, a glint of approval in her eyes. "She has defaulted on over $80,000 in high-interest loans. When she tried to use this forged document to access the trust, she committed federal wire fraud and forgery. We froze all her personal accounts immediately." "And the police at my parents' house?" I asked. "We dispatched them to serve her with a formal summons and to inform her that she is under criminal investigation by the bank's fraud division," Kensington explained. "Right now, she is sitting in that room trying to convince your parents that the bank made a clerical error and that if you just come in and verify the signature in person, everything will be fine." I stared at the forged signature. She had actually done it. She hated me, she called me trash, she wished I was dead, but she was perfectly willing to steal my identity to save her own skin. And my parents were blindly enabling her, begging the trash to come save the queen. "What happens if I tell you right now that this is a forgery?" I asked, looking up at Kensington. "Then we proceed with criminal charges," Kensington said without missing a beat. "She will likely face prison time. However, if you walk into that room and confirm that you signed it, the bank will release the funds, her creditors will be temporarily appeased, and she will walk away clean." I let out a slow, deep breath. The power I held in this moment was absolute. I could save her. I could walk in there, lie to a bank manager, risk my own reputation, and bail out the sister who wanted me dead. Or I could let the guillotine fall. I have a counter-proposal, Kensington, I said, a dangerous smirk playing on my lips. I want to go into that room. I want to look her in the eye. But I need you to come in with me, bringing the undeniable proof of her massive debts. I want my parents to hear it from an authoritative, third-party source. They will never believe me. They need to hear it from you. Kensington's lips curved into a predatory smile. She clearly did not like Sloane's arrogant attitude either. I believe that can be arranged. It is standard procedure to inform all account holders of the reasons for an account freeze. Good, I said, turning toward the door. Let's go open the Pandora's box. Thank you for watching the first part of this incredibly intense revenge plot. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with the name of the city you live in. Every comment helps the video reach more viewers. Thank you so much. Stay tuned to see how Delaney will crush her family's false pride in the next part. I walked down the quiet, carpeted hallway of the VIP wing, Kensington matching my pace with a thick manila folder tucked securely under her arm. The soft lighting above us felt overly dramatic for the execution that was about to take place. My heavy boots made a dull thudding sound against the expensive floor, a stark reminder that I did not belong in their polished, superficial world. And for the first time, I was genuinely proud of that. Kensington stopped in front of the frosted glass door of conference room B. She gave me a brief, calculating look, a silent confirmation that we were about to detonate a bomb in the middle of my family's pristine delusion. I nodded. She reached out and pushed the door open. The scene inside was painfully predictable. My mother, Corinne, was sitting on the edge of a leather chair, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue, playing the role of the distraught matriarch perfectly. My father, Harrison, was pacing in front of the large window overlooking the city, his hands clasped behind his back, projecting an image of irritated authority. And there, in the center of it all, was Sloane. She was wearing a tailored beige trench coat, looking flawlessly put together, though her leg was bouncing nervously under the mahogany table. When the door opened, all three heads snapped toward us. Harrison stopped pacing, his posture stiffening immediately. Corinne let out a long, exaggerated sigh of relief. Sloane's eyes narrowed the second she saw me. Finally, Harrison snapped, checking his gold watch, an item I knew for a fact he bought at a pawn shop but claimed was a retirement gift. Do you have any idea how long we have been waiting, Delaney? Your sister is going through a severe crisis, and you decided to take your sweet time. I stepped into the room, the scent of motor oil and sawdust following me in, clashing violently with the aroma of the expensive espresso they had been served. I did not sit down. I just stood near the door, crossing my arms over my stained coveralls. Sloane stood up, her face twisted in a mixture of relief and deep disgust. She looked me up and down, her nose wrinkling. Are you kidding me right now? I told you to come straight here. You could not even bother to go home and change into something decent? You smell like a sewer, Delaney. We are in a VIP banking suite, for heaven's sake. I am a plumber, Sloane, I said, my voice deadpan. I came straight from the job site. The job site that actually pays my bills. Well, it is embarrassing, she hissed, glancing nervously at Kensington. Just sit down and sign the stupid paper so we can leave. Some hacker got into my accounts and froze everything. The bank is overreacting, but they need the secondary signature on the old trust account to authorize a temporary transfer. Just do it. Corinne stood up and walked toward me, putting a trembling hand on my arm. Please, sweetheart. Put aside the fight from last night. We were all just stressed. Family forgives family. Your sister needs this money to secure her future with Mr. Vaughn. Be the bigger person. I looked down at my mother's hand on my dirty sleeve. Less than a day ago, she had watched me pack my bags and let me walk out the door into the night because I was a toxic peasant. Now, she was calling me sweetheart. The manipulation was so transparent it made my stomach turn. I am not signing anything yet, I said, pulling my arm away from Corinne. I turned to look at my father. I thought I was dead to you, Harrison. I thought no one wanted me here. Harrison's jaw tightened. Do not test my patience today, Delaney. I am still your father, and I am telling you to sign the document. We can discuss your attitude problem later, under my roof. It is funny you mention your roof, I muttered softly, though the true weight of that statement would not land until later. I shifted my gaze back to Sloane, who was now glaring at me with pure venom. What is your problem? Sloane demanded, her voice rising in pitch. It is just a signature. It does not cost you a dime. Why do you always have to be so difficult and spiteful? Because Kensington's crisp, authoritative voice cut through the room like a scalpel. She knows that signing that document would make her an accessory to federal wire fraud. The room went dead silent. The kind of silence where you could hear the hum of the air conditioning unit through the vents. Corinne slowly backed away, her hands dropping to her sides. Harrison froze, his eyes darting between me and the branch manager. Sloane's face drained of all color. The perfect beige makeup suddenly looked like a sickly mask. Excuse me, she stammered, trying to muster her usual arrogant tone but failing miserably. I do not know what you are talking about. I was hacked. Kensington walked to the head of the table, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. She placed the thick file down and opened it. We do not have time for fairy tales, Ms. Vance. You are not a victim of cybercrime. Kensington did not hold back. She laid out the documents on the table with the precision of a seasoned prosecutor presenting a murder weapon. Our fraud department conducted a thorough review of your financial portfolio this morning, Kensington began, looking directly at Sloane. You currently hold 14 active credit cards, all of which are severely past due. You have 3 separate retail accounts and collections. And, most concerningly, you defaulted on an $84,000 high-interest loan from a private lending firm last week. They are currently preparing to file a civil suit for fraudulent misrepresentation. Corinne let out a strangled gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. $84,000? Sloane, what is she talking about? You told us your business was booming. Harrison stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and confusion. There must be a mistake. My daughter is a luxury event planner. She handles high-profile clients. Look at her car, look at her clothes. Her car is 3 months behind on lease payments, sir, Kensington stated coldly, without looking up from the file. And her clothes are largely purchased on credit that she cannot repay. But that is not why we froze the accounts or why the police visited your residence. Kensington pulled the single sheet of authorization paper from the back of the file and slid it toward Harrison. Your daughter attempted to access a joint trust account to withdraw $50,000, Kensington continued. The account requires 2 signatures. She provided hers, and then she forged the signature of her sister, Delaney Vance. We flagged the forgery immediately. Harrison stared at the paper. He looked at Sloane's signature, and then at the neat cursive of my name below it. The undeniable proof of his golden child's criminal act was sitting right in front of him. Sloane, Harrison whispered, his voice trembling for the first time in my life. Did you do this? Sloane was backed against the window, her hands shaking. The illusion was shattering, the glass falling all around her. But instead of apologizing, instead of showing remorse, she doubled down. She looked at me, her eyes filled with frantic rage. It is her fault. Sloane screamed, pointing a manicured finger at me. If she had just co-signed the business loan last night like I asked, I would not have had to do this. She forced my hand. She is sitting on all that money from her disgusting little plumbing jobs and refuses to help her own blood. I forced you to commit a felony? I asked, raising an eyebrow. That is an impressive level of mental gymnastics, even for you. Sloane slammed her hands on the table. You do not understand anything. I am this close to securing a $500,000 contract with Arthur Vaughan. Once I throw this showcase event, I will pay everything back. The credit cards, the loans, all of it. I just needed a bridge loan. I am a visionary, Delaney. You are just a laborer. I deserve that money more than you do. Her entitlement was breathtaking. She was cornered, exposed as a thief and a liar, and she still believed she was superior to me because she wore a beige trench coat and knew how to pronounce French wine names. Corinne was crying openly now, gripping the back of a chair. Delaney, please, she sobbed. If they press charges, your sister will go to prison. Her life will be ruined. Please, just tell the bank manager you signed it. Let her have the money. We will pay you back, I swear it. Even now, even with the undeniable proof of Sloane's betrayal sitting on the table, my parents were still trying to sacrifice me to save her. I was the scapegoat, the eternal shock absorber for their mistakes. You want me to lie to a federal bank, I said slowly, making sure every word echoed in the room. You want me to commit perjury, risk my own business license, and hand over $50,000 to a woman who told me I was dead to her less than 24 hours ago. We are family, Harrison shouted, his desperation turning into aggression. You have no idea what it takes to survive in the real world of business. Sloane is trying to secure a massive client. $500,000, Delaney. You will never see that kind of money in your entire life digging around in sewers. If you ruin this for her, you ruin this family. I stared at him. I stared at the man who had dismissed my graduation, mocked my truck, and kicked me out of my own house. Then I reached into the breast pocket of my coveralls and pulled out my phone. I opened my commercial banking application. I used the facial recognition to unlock it, navigated to the primary operating account for Horizon Plumbing and HVAC Solutions, and clicked on the balance summary. The screen displayed the numbers in bright, undeniable green. I turned the phone around and placed it flat on the mahogany table, right next to Sloane's forged document. You are right, Harrison, I said quietly. I do not know what it is like to see $500,000. Harrison looked down at the screen. Corinne leaned over his shoulder. Sloane, unable to help herself, took a step forward to look. The numbers glared back at them. $1,245,000. Liquid capital. Not credit. Not a loan. Cash. Harrison's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The blood rushed from his face, leaving him looking pale and suddenly very old. Corinne gasped, her hand flying to her chest as if she had been physically struck. Sloane stared at the phone, her eyes wide, her brain refusing to process the reality of what she was seeing. I do not see $500,000, I continued, my voice steady and cold. I see a 7-figure business that I built with my bare hands, in the mud, in the sewers, while you people were busy playing dress up. I am not the failure of this family. I am the only one funding it. The entire room fell silent. Just imagine their expressions at that moment. Have you ever experienced the feeling of proving those who looked down on you completely wrong? Comment below. And now, let me deliver the final blow. The silence in the room was deafening. It was the sound of a 28-year-old hierarchy collapsing in real time. My father, the man who demanded respect without ever earning it, was staring at his cell phone screen like it was an alien artifact. My mother was weeping silently, perhaps finally realizing the magnitude of the bridge she had burned. And Sloane. Sloane looked like she was going to be sick. This is fake, Sloane stammered, pointing a shaky finger at the phone. This is a dummy account. You downloaded an app to make it look like you have money. You fix toilets. I did not even bother validating her delusion with a response. Kensington stepped in, her tone dripping with professional disdain. I can assure you, Ms. Vance, Horizon Solutions is one of our top-tier commercial clients. That balance is entirely accurate. Your sister is a highly successful contractor. Before Sloane could formulate another pathetic excuse, the heavy door to conference room be opened again. A tall, distinguished older man in a bespoke navy suit walked in. He had silver hair and a sharp, authoritative presence. He was holding a leather briefcase and looking mildly annoyed. It was Arthur Vaughn, the billionaire developer. The Golden Goose Sloane was trying to trap. He had clearly been in the adjacent VIP suite and had heard the yelling. "Excuse me, Kensington," Mr. Vaughn said, his deep voice commanding the room instantly. "I do not mean to interrupt, but the shouting is carrying through the walls, and I have a conference call in 10 minutes. Kensington immediately softened her demeanor. "My apologies, Mr. Vaughn. We are dealing with a complicated fraud issue. We will keep our voices down." Mr. Vaughn nodded, about to turn around, when his eyes landed on Sloane. He frowned, recognizing her face. "You are the event planner, correct?" "Sloane Vance. We have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow afternoon regarding the coastal resort launch." Sloane's demeanor shifted faster than lightning. The panic vanished, replaced by an artificial, blinding smile. She stood up straighter, smoothing down her trench coat. Mr. Vaughn. Yes, what a pleasant surprise. Please excuse the mess. We are just clearing up a minor banking error with my family. I am very much looking forward to presenting my vision for your showcase at the Grand Atrium. Mr. Vaughn did not return the smile. He looked from Sloane to the forged document on the table, then to Kensington's serious face. He was a billionaire because he was observant, and he clearly smelled the desperation in the room. Then his gaze shifted to me. He looked at my grease-stained coveralls, my messy hair, and the heavy boots. A genuine smile broke across his face. Delaney, Mr. Vaughn asked, stepping into the room and extending his hand. Is that you hiding under that hard hat? I took his hand and shook it firmly. Good to see you, Mr. Vaughn. Sorry for the attire. I just came from the industrial park sector. Do not apologize, he laughed warmly. Those hands saved my downtown high-rise project last month. When the main water lines ruptured, your crew was the only one that worked through the night to fix it. You saved me millions in potential water damage. I told my procurement team I want Horizon Solutions on all my future builds. Period. Harrison looked like he was going to pass out. His toxic, blue-collar daughter was casually shaking hands with the man his golden daughter viewed as a god. Sloane's artificial smile cracked. You know my sister? Know her? Mr. Vaughn chuckled. She is the best commercial contractor in the state. I trust her judgment implicitly. He paused, his sharp eyes darting back to Sloane. You said you were planning the showcase at the Grand Atrium, Ms. Vance? Yes, Sloane said eagerly, sensing a sliver of hope. It is the perfect venue for your brand. Exclusive, luxurious, elegant. Mr. Vaughn looked at me, an amused glint in his eye. Delaney, did your LLC not just acquire the Grand Atrium property last week? You mentioned wanting the rear warehouse space for your new equipment fleet. The room spun. I could practically see the exact moment Sloane's soul left her body. The ironic link had snapped shut like a steel trap. We did, I said, looking directly into Sloane's horrified eyes. Horizon Solutions owns the Grand Atrium. We are currently reviewing the tenant leases. We have a strict policy against renting event space to individuals with a history of financial fraud and severe debt. Mr. Vaughn's expression hardened instantly. He looked at Sloane, his demeanor shifting from polite to freezing cold. He did not need to hear the details of the police visit or the forged signature. The context clues were blindingly obvious. He was dealing with a fraudster. Ms. Vance, Mr. Vaughn said, his voice void of any warmth. I believe we can cancel our meeting tomorrow. My company requires vendors with impeccable financial standing and integrity. Clearly, you possess neither. Do not contact my office again. He gave me a brief, respectful nod. Take care, Delaney. Have your office send over the contracts for the coastal project by Friday. He turned and walked out of the room, shutting the door firmly behind him. The silence returned, heavier and darker than before. The illusion was stripped away entirely. Sloane was not a luxury planner. She was a broke criminal who had just lost the one client that could have saved her, and she lost him because she insulted the owner of the building she wanted to rent. Sloane slowly sank into her chair, burying her face in her hands. A wretched, guttural sob ripped from her throat. It was not a fake cry to get sympathy. It was the sound of total defeat. I looked at the pen resting next to the forged document, the weapon they wanted me to use to save her. I reached out and picked it up. Harrison and Corinne held their breath, their eyes wide with a desperate, pathetic hope that I would still sign it. That after everything, the beaten dog would still come back to protect the master. I held the heavy silver pen in my hand, feeling the cold metal against my callous fingers. My parents were leaning forward slightly, their bodies tense, silently begging me to be the submissive, manageable daughter I had always been. They wanted me to erase the consequences. They wanted the magic trick where Delaney takes the pain so Sloane can keep the spotlight. I looked at Kensington. I need 2 forms, I said calmly. First, a formal affidavit of forgery. I am officially declaring that I did not sign this document, and I request that the bank proceed with whatever legal action is necessary to protect my identity." Corinne let out a sharp wail, burying her face in Harrison's shoulder. Second, I continued, ignoring my mother's theatrics. "I want to close the joint trust account entirely. I want my exact half of the funds transferred immediately into my commercial operating account. Sloane can do whatever she wants with her half, assuming the bank does not seize it to cover her debts." "No," Sloane shrieked, lifting her tear-streaked face from her hands. "You cannot do that. If you take your half, I will not have enough to stop the collection agency. They are going to sue me, Delaney. They are going to take my car, my clothes, everything." "They are not taking your things, Sloane," I replied, my voice devoid of empathy. "They are taking back their things. You never owned them." Kensington nodded briskly. "I will have the paperwork drafted immediately. The affidavit will trigger an automatic police report from our fraud division. They will likely be in touch with you by this evening, Ms. Vance." She directed the last sentence at Sloane, whose eyes widened in pure terror. Kensington turned on her heel and left the room to get the documents. Harrison pulled away from Corinne and marched toward me. The anger was gone, replaced by a frantic, scrambling desperation. He realized that the authority he had wielded over me for 28 years was gone, evaporated the moment he saw my bank balance. So, he tried a different tactic. He tried to claim ownership of my success. "Delaney, listen to me," Harrison said, his voice trembling as he held up his hands. "We made a mistake. I admit it. We misjudged you. We did not know how well you were doing. But you have over $1 million in liquid cash. You are rich. $50,000 is nothing to you. It is pocket change. You can pay off her loan right now, today, and make all of this go away." He paused, trying to muster a fatherly smile that looked grotesque on his pale face. "You can save your sister. You can save our family's reputation. I am commanding you, as your father, to do the right thing." I stared at him, marveling at the sheer audacity. "You are commanding me?" The man who kicked me out of his house 12 hours ago, telling me I was dead to him, is now demanding that I spend my money to clean up a felony. "It is your duty," Harrison insisted, his voice cracking. "We raised you. We put a roof over your head for 18 years. "Ah, yes. The roof," I said softly. I reached into the deep pocket of my coveralls and pulled out a folded piece of thick legal paper. I had brought it from Miller's office. I unfolded it slowly, deliberately, smoothing out the creases, and placed it on the table right next to the forged bank slip. "What is that?" Corinne asked, her voice a fragile whisper. 3 years ago, Harrison, your consulting firm went under, I said, keeping my eyes locked on his. You were 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank was going to foreclose on the house. You told Mom that a state-funded housing relief program bought the debt and allowed you to stay on a subsidized lease. Harrison swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the paper. Yes, we got lucky. You did not get lucky, I corrected him. State programs do not bail out luxury suburban homes. I did. I hired a real estate attorney. My company, Horizon Solutions, bought your mortgage from the bank. I own the deed. I pay the property taxes. I am your landlord. The silence returned, but this time, it felt suffocating. Harrison reached out with a trembling hand and pulled the document toward him. It was the 30-day notice of eviction. He read the words, his lips moving silently, his eyes scanning the official stamp of the law firm. The house you kicked me out of last night, I continued, my voice echoing in the quiet room. The driveway you told me I was too dirty to park my truck in. The living room where you stood by and nodded while Sloane told me I was a piece of trash. It all belongs to me. Corinne slumped into her chair, her eyes rolling back slightly, looking like she might actually faint. Sloane was completely silent, her mouth hanging open, the reality of her total destruction finally crashing down on her. I am officially terminating your lease, I stated, the words tasting like pure honey. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. If you are not gone by the 1st of the month, I will have the sheriff remove you. Then I am going to sell the house and I am going to use the profits to expand my warehouse fleet. Maybe I will buy a few more F-250s. Harrison dropped the paper. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a horrific realization. He had spent his entire life worshipping an illusion, prioritizing a daughter who produced nothing but debt and lies, while actively crushing the daughter who had secretly saved him from ruin. "Delaney, please," Harrison whispered, tears finally breaking through his stoic facade. "Where will we go? We do not have any savings. We have nothing." "You have each other," I replied coldly. "You have your perfect family. And you do not have to worry about me being around to ruin the aesthetic anymore." Kensington returned with the documents. I signed the affidavit of forgery. I signed the withdrawal slip for my half of the trust. I did not look at them again. I handed the pen back to Kensington, picked up my hard hat, and walked toward the door. "Delaney, wait!" Corinne screamed, lunging forward, but her legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees on the expensive carpet. "Please do not leave us. We love you. We are so sorry." I stopped in the doorway, my hand resting on the cool metal of the handle. I looked back at them one last time. The broken father, the weeping mother, the ruined golden child. It was a pathetic portrait of a toxic dynasty that had finally eaten itself alive. "You do not love me, Mom," I said gently, speaking the absolute truth. "You love what I can do for you. And I am done doing it." I opened the door and walked out. The walk through the bank lobby felt entirely different this time. The sterile air conditioning did not bother me. The hushed whispers of the wealthy clients meant nothing. I pushed open the heavy glass double doors and stepped out into the blinding afternoon sun. The heat of the day hit my face, and I took a deep, massive breath. The air tasted cleaner. It tasted like freedom. I walked across the manicured parking lot toward my dusty, dented Ford F-250. It looked exactly like what it was, a machine built for hard work, a testament to endurance and resilience. I climbed into the cab, the worn leather seat embracing me like an old friend. I tossed my hard hat onto the passenger seat, put the key in the ignition, and fired up the engine. The deep, guttural roar of the diesel motor vibrated through my boots, a beautiful sound that drowned out the years of whispers, insults, and silent rejections. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I looked in the rearview mirror. The bank grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely behind a row of trees. I did not feel an overwhelming sense of joy. Revenge is not joyful. It is messy, and it leaves a bitter aftertaste. But what I did feel was a profound sense of peace. The heavy, invisible anchor that I had been dragging around for 28 years had finally been cut loose. Over the next few weeks, the fallout was spectacular and entirely predictable. Kensington was true to her word. The bank pressed federal charges against Sloan for wire fraud and forgery. Due to the amount she attempted to steal, it was classified as a felony. She avoided jail time by taking a plea deal, but her credit was annihilated, and she was ordered to pay massive restitution. The private lending firm sued her, liquidating whatever fake designer assets she had left. Harrison and Corinne scrambled, begging relatives for loans, but nobody wanted to touch the radioactive mess they had created. True to my word, on the 31st day, the locks on the suburban house were changed. I hired a crew to clear out whatever they left behind. They ended up moving into a cramped, two-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city, miles away from their country club friends. I did not gloat. I did not drive past their new place. I just went back to work. I signed the massive contract with Arthur Vaughan, expanded my crew, and bought that warehouse space behind the grand atrium. But toxic families are like a virus. They always try to mutate and find a way back in. Which brings me to today. I was sitting in my new office, reviewing blueprints for a commercial piping layout, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Aunt Marjorie, the loyal flying monkey who had yelled at me via voicemail on that fateful morning. I had unblocked her number temporarily because I needed an old family recipe she had, but I clearly forgot to block it again. "Delaney, I hope you are happy with yourself. Your sister is working the graveyard shift as a cashier at a gas station just to pay her probation fees. Your father's pride is broken. They are miserable. You have made your point. You are a millionaire now. Sloan has humbled herself. She is begging for a job. Just give her a position doing data entry at your plumbing company. Show some mercy. She is still your sister. I stared at the glowing screen, reading the words over and over again. Show some mercy. She is still your sister. I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who sat silently at the dinner table while they gave her expensive wine away. The one who parked her truck down the street to save them from embarrassment. The one they looked at and said, "You are dead to us," without a single ounce of hesitation. I typed out my reply slowly, my fingers steady. She is not my sister. She is just a stranger who shares my DNA. Tell her the gas station is hiring shift managers. Maybe she can plan an event in the snack aisle. Do not contact me again. I hit send, blocked the number permanently, and tossed the phone onto my desk. I leaned back in my chair, looking out the large window overlooking my busy, thriving equipment yard. Love is not something you should have to buy by shrinking yourself. Loyalty is not a suicide pact where you drown so someone else can float on your back. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to take a machete to a rotten family tree and walk away from the falling timber. Recently, Aunt Marjorie has been constantly texting me, saying that Sloane is working as a cashier at a gas station to pay off debts and begging me to give her a job at the plumbing shop. I blocked her number. Do you think I was too cruel to my own flesh and blood, or is this the price they deserve? Was I wrong? Thank you for listening to my story. If you empathize or like how I handled this situation, please subscribe, like, and share this video. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next dramatic family drama. Have a strong day.